Hey, good morning, friends. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Abam. We're continuing in Mishnah Berurah, Shulchan Aruch Archaim, Siman Kuf Lamed Ches. Shaloi l'shayer beParsha pachos mishlosh Pesukim. You should not leave over in the Parsha less than 3 Pesukim. In other words, when you are finishing up a Kriya, you should not finish less than 3 Pesukim to the end. Says the Mechaber, HaKoyer b'Torah. When it reads the Torah, l'shayer beParsha pachos mishlosh Pesukim. Should not leave over in the Parsha less than 3 Pesukim. Mipnei hayotzim az mibeis hakneses. Because those who leave from the shul, sheyoimru ha'ola acharav la'yikra ela shnei Pesukim hanesharim. If you leave with less than 3 Pesukim left to the end, then people who may have to leave the shul are going to think that the next oila will just finish up the remaining 2 Pesukim, and that you're not allowed to do. V'chein lo yaschel ba pachos mishlosh Pesukim. Also, you cannot begin less than 3 Pesukim after a new beginning. Why? Because those who come late, sheyomru, they're going to say that the first oila only read 2 Pesukim. The people who came late are not going to realize the oila before began in the previous parsha, or those who leave the shul who see that you stopped less than 3 Pesukim to the end will not know that the next oila will continue into the next parsha. This comes from the Gemara in Brachos, Gemara Megillah on Daf Chaf Aleph. Gzeira mishum hanechnasim v'hayotzim. Hayotzim v'hanechnasim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, lo yishar, hainu shlo yisayim l'shum echad me'olam samach la'aschal la'asar parsha she'achrei pachos mishlosh Pesukim. That is, you should not conclude for any of the oilim close to the beginning of the next parsha less than 3 Pesukim. Why? Mibnei hayotzin ben gavra legavra. Because of those who leave between one person and another, between aliyah. Sheyizbru, they're going to think shezeh sheyala achrav la'yikra rak shnei Pesukim, that the next oila only read 2 Pesukim at a parsha until the next parsha. Parsha, we'll see in the Ramah, parsha means either a pei or a samach, either a parsha psucha or a parsha susuma. V'loi masha oilam karim parsha, dahainu sheni shlishi, vu tas gamor. Not what the world thinks a parsha is, where it's demarcated, sheni, shlishi, that has no halachic standing at all. The demarcations of sheni, ushlishi were just, so to speak, invented, but they don't have halachic standing. V'yizberu laimar, they're going to think to say, shemotar akriya afilu b'pachos mishlosh Pesukim. Who cares if they think that the next oila only read 2 Pesukim? The answer is because then they're going to think that you're allowed to have a kriya of less than 3 Pesukim. V'imta, if you made a mistake, v'siyim shnei Pesukim samach leparsha, and you concluded 2 Pesukim near the parsha, ubeirach la'achra, and you made a bracha afterwards, isalik inyana. In other words, let's say you stopped and there are only 2 Pesukim left to the end of the parsha. Isalik inyana. If the topic is over, Kagon beParshas HaMoedos, for example, in the Parsha of Yomim Tovim, Shetah B'Revi'i, you made a mistake in the 4th Aliyah, V'lo Shia Rak Shnei Pesukim, and you only left over 2 Pesukim, Maschil Im HaChamishi, Pasuk Echad L'Mafreya. Then the 5th Aliyah, you need to go back 1 Pasuk. You have to go back and reread one of the Pesukim. The Machzas HaShekel is bothered. Why do you need to do that? Why don't you just continue reading beyond those 2 Pesukim that you need to read from the Moedim? The answer is because in the Parsha of the Moedim, the Pesukim after are not related to the Moed. So that if you only left over 2 Pesukim, you go back and you read 1 Pasuk L'Mafreya. I'm sorry, you don't do that. Ein ha'oila achrav maschel L'Mafreya Pasachad. Excuse me, the next oila does not go back 1 Pasuk. No, I'm sorry. If you made a mistake b'Ravi and you only left over 2 psukim, then the 5th aliyah goes back lemafreya. Why? Because you have no choice. The topic is over. You can't read more. You can't read beyond the designated kriya, so you have no choice but to go back and read 1 pasuk lemafreya. But v'iloi salik inyana, if the topic is not over, then we do not go back and read 1 pasuk lemafreya. Ein ha'ila achra mas lemafreya pasuk echad, ela yascha likrois mimakim shasim ha'ila shalafanav. He just begins to read where the last oila stopped. V'yikra oisan shnei psukim. He'll read those 2 remaining 2 psukim. V'oid shloisha psukim. And then another 3 psukim into the next subject. Oyoser or more mi parsha shalachra. Likewise, the Mechaber said, you should not begin less than 3 psukim after a parsha. Says Mishnah, Dahainu shalo yisayim im harishain shnei psukim achar haparsha. That is, you should not end off with the first aliyah 2 psukim after the parsha. Meaning, the first aliyah that you read should not conclude 2 psukim into the next parsha. Why? Because then the second aliyah will begin 2 psukim into the parsha. V'yoimru hanechnasin bein gavra legavra. Then those who enter bein gavra legavra are going to say, Shezeh shekara lefanav loikara ela shnei psukim shemeirosh haparsha ad kan. Because then those who enter ben gavra legavra are going to say that the oila before him only read 2 psukim from the beginning of the parsha until now. In other words, if let's say the kohen reads 50 psukim, but he ends 2 psukim into the new parsha, then the Levi, then somebody who came to the shul late, is going to say, oh, for kohen, they only lay in 2 psukim. Ve'ein chilik b'chol zeh ben kriyas hashiva. It doesn't make a distinction whether the oila was for the main 7, or oisin shekar and loisafar, those called for the added aliyos. Va'afilu hamaftir la yaschel shnei psukim la'achar haparsha. Even maftir should not begin 2 psukim after the parsha. Kagon sheyesh parsha b'soif shel chamisha psukim. Let's say there's a parsha at the end of the sedra of 5 psukim. Let's say the last 5 psukim of a parsha. When I say parsha, I mean of what we call parsha shavua. Let's say they are a parsha unto themselves, under 5 psukim. Kagon sheyesh parsha b'soif shel chamisha psukim ela yikra kula. Instead, the mafter should read all 5 psukim. Even if the shvi or the achrein just read these 5 psukim, the mafter should not read the last 3 psukim, because then he's beginning 2 psukim into the parsha. Yachal lachsar v'likrois oisam l'kairei hamafter. He could go back and read these 5 psukim as mafter. Umi kal makaim im hischel hamafter mishloisha psukim ha'achreinim v'kara misham. Nevertheless, if the mafter read just from these 3 psukim and read from there, afal pishadayin loy berach bracha achreina, even if he didn't make the bracha achreina yet, we're not going to make him go back to the beginning of the parsha. Ein tzarich lachzor l'hasan b'tchilas parsha v'dai b'kriyasu. This kriya will be sufficient. The Sharatzion points out that it's mashma if he would want, let's say like this, the last 5 psukim of a parsha are a parsha to themselves, and the mafter, for whatever reason, the shvi stopped 2 psukim in. If the mafter already began by reading the last 3 psukim, he does not go back, even if he didn't yet make a bracha achroina. The Sharatzion says, but it's mashma, if he wants to, he can. However, the Sharatzion says it's only a mafter could go back, because a mafter is allowed to read what the last person read. Masha'en kein other aliyos, it's not kedai lecharchila, even if he would want to go back, and he didn't make the bracha achroina, he should not. Because there we say it's not nacha in likrois lemafreya. Siv Katan Gimel, Mibnei HaNechnasim. We're afraid of people who are entering the shul late. So if you're going to start 2 Pesukim in, they're going to think the last Oila only read 2 Pesukim. B'choza l'chatchila, this is all l'chatchila b'di'aved, im kar l'harishayin v'siyim shnei Pesukim achar ha'parsha, u'beirach l'achreha. The second guy is not going to go back. Lo yaschel hasheni ha'oila achrav mirosh ha'parsha. The next oila will not go back to the beginning of the parsha. Lo yikra mimakam shasiyim harishon ve'elach. He will read from where the first one ended off, 2 Pesukim into the parsha. De'ein lahachmer b'di'eved mishum chshash nechnasin v'yoytzin. We are not machmer b'di'eved because of a chshash of people who entered late or leave early. V'chanal b'soiv sivkatan aleph. Siv Katan Dalid is on the Ramah, and the Ramah we will see Be'ezras Hashem tomorrow.
Recording stopped.